Hello, dear traders. Have you noticed how the market sometimes stops at a price even though you see big buy or sell orders on the footprint? That's called absorption. What is the explanation? What is absorption? The footprint shows us the market orders when traders press the buy or the sell button. We can see the orders on the footprint. For example, here we can see 0 orders on the bid, 38 on the ask. Here we can see 17,174 bid, 0 ask. We can also see here, for example, 23 bid, 10 ask. When we see at the top big buy orders, but the price doesn't move, like here, we have a lot of contracts, but the price doesn't move up, it closes down. That means at that level there are a lot of pending or resting orders. So these buy orders were absorbed. We can see here an absorption. Imagine you are pouring water into a glass, but the glass never fills up no matter how much you pour. That's what absorption looks like in the market. Buyers and sellers keep throwing orders, but someone on the other side is catching everything like a giant sponge. In this video, I show you what absorption is, why it matters, and how to set up the Hameral Footprint PRO indicator so you can actually see where the big players are hiding. Absorption can happen everywhere in the candle, at the bottom, at the top, in the middle, and so on. And also in different market conditions, at resistance zones, at support zones, in the middle of the structure, and so on. But not all absorptions are useful for making trade decisions. If you want to trade based on absorption, you need to focus only on high probability zones. That means you are taking your key areas, and if you have an absorption in your key area, that can be another confirmation that the price can move in the direction you want. Also, absorptions are more valuable when they happen at the bottom or at the top. This is why in Hameral Footprint PRO we added smart filters. We don't just mark imbalance, we only mark absorption when it happens at the extreme, with enough contracts in consecutive rows. So we don't watch only one row, we can watch multiple rows. Here, for example, we have 4. Here, for example, we have 2 with enough contracts, not just one contract. Here we need more contracts like 38, 24, and so on. And also, we need to have a real movement away from that level. That means we are avoiding little candles. Because look, here we can see 3 levels of imbalance, but this candle is too small compared with this one. So we are filtering the volume, the number of contracts, the percentage of absorption, and also the size of the candlestick. This removes a ton of noise and helps you focus only on what really matters. And remember, every footprint indicator uses its own logic and its own filters. That's why 2 different tools, 2 different indicators, can show you different zones even if the data is the same, even if the principle is the same. So make sure you understand what your indicator is actually showing, because not all absorptions are created equal. Now, let's see how to set up the Hameral Footprint chart to show absorption on different assets. Every market has its own volatility and volume. We can see here that MNQ is very volatile. We have multiple levels, we have big candles. On ES, we have less volatility. The candles are smaller. Here we have a 3-minute chart, and here a 1-minute chart. Also, we can observe and compare the volume. Here we have at each level 31, 28, 27. But if you are watching here on ES, we can see bigger volume, 449, 790. So a lot of volume. And because of that, we have to adjust the settings of the indicators to fit our asset and our time frame. So let's dive into the settings. Let's start with MNQ. What we have to do is search on the chart for the tops and the bottoms and look inside those candles. What happened at the top? What happened at the bottom? How were the orders? Did we have an absorption or not? And based on the things that you observe inside the candle, you can adjust some settings to have absorption only in the relevant areas. Okay, let's say here we have a top and we want to look inside this candle. Let's make it a little bigger. Now we are going to indicators to see the absorption settings. And now, add absorption. Okay, we have it here. The parameters that we can modify are like this. Show imbalance, show absorption zone. Of course, you have to check it to show absorption on the chart. If you uncheck it, you will not see absorption. Absorption. Consecutive levels. As I was saying, every asset has different behavior. We have to observe at the top and bottom how many levels with imbalance we have each time. So absorption consecutive levels is the number of price levels that must show absorption in a row to form a valid zone. Let's say here, how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 consecutive rows with absorption. Of course, we have to do deeper research and analyze more candles to make a conclusion, but let's say that all the tops and all the bottoms where we have absorption are showing more than 4 rows. You can adjust to 6, 8, 3, and so on to see more signals. Now, the absorption percent. What does this mean? It's the percentage of aggressive volume that must be absorbed to count. For example, here 70%. It is a decent balance between sensitivity and accuracy. How can we calculate? At this level we can see 0 bid and 38 ask. That means 100% absorbed. Here 24 with 0, 100% absorbed. Here 14 and 1, total 15, so 93.3% absorbed. So we can adjust, let's say, to 80%. Now the absorption depth in ticks. That means how big the candle is, how many levels it should have to be considered valid absorption. The absorption volume filter is the minimum number of contracts at each level. For example, here we can see the minimum is 13 if we consider more levels. So if we put here 6 levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, until here the minimum is 13. So if we put 13, 6 levels, 80% absorption, and the candle should have minimum 15 rows, we should see the absorption here. Yes, the thing is that when we adjust these settings, we can have more or fewer absorption signals. Just to make it easier for you, we made some templates for MNQ, NQ, ES, and we are adding more. Just right-click, Templates, Load, and you will find them. For example, Hameral MNQ 1-minute footprint, and you will have the footprint with our recommended settings. Of course, our recommendation is for you to make your own research and adjust the footprints as you need. Now let's take a look at NQ and see the differences. The first step when searching for absorption areas is to check how the price reacted at the top and bottom. We look inside the candle and try to adjust the settings to show absorption. Let's consider this as a bottom. Looking inside the candle, what do we observe? We have only 1 row of absorption and the minimum contracts are 11. So in our settings, if we want to see absorption of this level, we can set it to 1 or 2 rows. Here we have 2 rows because here it's also more than 70% absorption. 24 at bid, 2 at ask. That's more than 70%. So we can set more filters to avoid little candles. Absorption volume filter, for example, at 10. Why? Because the minimum here is 11. So you can see the difference between MNQ and NQ. On MNQ, we had a minimum of 20 contracts, because of course MNQ has more volume than NQ. This is how you can adjust your footprint. Also, if we look at ES, we observe that here we have 2 rows of imbalance. We also have to increase the number of contracts. If on NQ we had a minimum of 10, on ES we have to put minimum 30 or even more, because ES has much more volume. Here, absorption volume filter must be set to more than 30. Also, we can adjust the absorption depth in ticks to avoid small candles, and decrease it a little because we don't have candles as big as in NQ or MNQ. The absorption percentage must also be decreased a little, because on ES we have less absorption compared to NQ and MNQ. ES is less volatile, so we reduce the percentage and also the consecutive levels, because we don't have as many levels as in the previous assets. We can set it to 2, maybe even 1. So everyone should adjust the settings as they need. Now you know exactly what absorption is, why it matters, and how to set up the Hameral Footprint Pro to spot with clarity, not clutter. Remember, absorption alone doesn't mean buy or sell. It is a signal of intent, not a guarantee. So use it carefully at support and resistance, at the POC, at the value area high or low, and always at your key areas with the right settings. Search for tops, search for bottoms, look inside the candles, observe how many levels, how much volume, how strong the absorption is, how big the candle is, and make your own settings that fit your trading style and your strategy. Play with the filters, test them on your charts, and most importantly, start thinking like the traders placing those hidden orders. If you find this useful, hit like, share it with a trading friend, and subscribe for more breakdowns like this. Also check our social media where you can find more examples. See you in the next video.